Then last week, she locked the door and dragged me across her tile floor. My sister stood by and screamed, "You deserved it!" You ever wonder what happens when a family decides you're no longer family, but still wants everything you've got? You think that was the worst part? No, that was just the beginning. I was slicing tomatoes at the kitchen counter when I heard them laughing behind me. Mom and Aurora. Just the two of them, again. Their voices rose and fell, bouncing off the old stucco walls like it was their house and I was just there. Like I didn't belong in the conversation or the room. I listened, even when I pretended not to. I always did. Then Mom said it, clear as day, to the neighbor she was giving a tour to. Aurora and I worked so hard to make this house ours. Not a slip of the tongue, no pause, nothing about me. I stood still, blade in hand, tomato juice on my fingers. No mention of the $70,000 I wired into her account 2 years ago to help close escrow. Not a whisper of the calls I made to the bank, the paperwork I filled, the nights I stayed up reviewing contracts so she wouldn't get screwed over. Just Aurora, just them. I turned back to the cutting board and finished slicing like nothing happened. But inside, something stung, sharp and fast. Ours? I muttered under my breath. It was always supposed to be all of ours. I sat through dinner with the same numbness I'd worn for years now. They talked over me, around me. Then the conversation turned to caregiving, Doreen's favorite measuring stick. Aurora's been such a blessing, Mom gushed. Always here, always helping, unlike some people. Some people? I wiped my mouth and swallowed before I said something I'd regret. I reminded her, gently, carefully, that I'd taken 6 weeks off work to drive her to chemo, to cook, clean, even help her with those shower bars she refused to ask a nurse for. She waved me off like a mosquito. "Oh, honey," she said, condescending and soft. "You just drove. Aurora handled the real things." I looked to Aurora for backup, some sort of, "That's not fair," but she just stared into her wine glass. Coward. I smiled, tight. The kind of smile you wear when you realize your breath isn't worth spending. I've learned over time, when you defend yourself in this house, you're the problem. Too sensitive, too confrontational. I let the conversation drift, but I was still there, listening. Later in the quiet, I sat in the back patio and let my eyes follow the edge of the stucco siding. That house, this house, was supposed to be ours. I noticed my name was missing from the calendar hanging in the kitchen. Everyone else had birthdays marked, vacations noted. Mine was blank. The space was just there. No one had asked my opinion on dinner plans, schedules, or remodeling since, well, I couldn't remember when. And then I remembered what Grandma always used to say when people treated you like an accessory. If they only call you when they need something, they don't see you. They see a tool. Was that what I was now? The ride to the hospital? The extra income? A placeholder? Something in me cracked that night. Not broken, but bending hard. When did I go from being their daughter to a background character in their story? Back inside, I passed the hallway that led to Mom's room and noticed something missing. Subtle, but not to me. The silver ring I'd custom made, LAM for Lori, Aurora, Mom, was gone from her jewelry tree. Not on her finger. Not in the tray. Just gone. That ring cost me more than money. I had it made the year after Dad died. I wanted something that symbolized the bond that was supposed to hold us together, even after we lost him. It wasn't flashy, just meaningful. But now, like so many things about me in this house, it had disappeared without mention. When a symbol disappears, it's never by accident. That night, after they went to bed, I was cleaning up the dishes when I overheard Aurora on the phone. "No, she doesn't need to be part of the paperwork. She just thinks she's helping." I froze. That was it. No mystery, no confusion, not a miscommunication. They weren't forgetting me. They were rewriting the story without me. 3 days passed. I worked. I slept. I convinced myself that maybe I'd overthought everything. That maybe it was just a slip of the tongue, a poorly phrased sentence, a forgotten thank you. Then I saw the photo. A friend tagged me on Facebook. It was a snapshot from my mother's living room, String lights, paper plates, people laughing around a tray of deviled eggs, family, extended cousins, neighbors I hadn't seen in years. The caption read, "Game night at Doreen's. So blessed to be surrounded by those who care." I wasn't told about it. No text, no call, not even a courtesy forward. Still in my work clothes, I drove over. Part of me hoping it was a misunderstanding. Maybe they'd forgotten, maybe they thought I was working late. But the moment I walked in, I knew it wasn't that. Aurora barely looked up from her glass of wine. Mom stood at the kitchen island, smiling wide, until she saw me. Then her expression dimmed into something awkward. She made a show of being busy, stirring dip that didn't need stirring. No one offered me a plate. A family friend blinked in surprise, tilting her head. "Oh, didn't know you'd be here. Thought this was just Aurora's side of the family." I nodded. No words. Just walked in far enough to not be in the way, but not close enough to be part of anything. They didn't see me. They didn't expect me. That was the point. Halfway through the evening, they started a trivia game. I stayed by the hallway arch, arms folded, pretending I was fine. A cousin made a loud joke. "Let's ask the homeowner, Aurora." The room laughed. Someone added, "Yeah, she knows every corner of this house." Doreen laughed too. "She's the one holding this place down, after all." I didn't flinch. I didn't remind them that my bank account made the down payment. I didn't point out that the walls they were laughing under were partly paid for by the life I put on hold. I just looked down. Pressed my lips together, took a slow, steady breath. Humiliation wears a quiet mask. Mine was smiling. The party thinned out around 10. I moved to grab my coat from the hallway rack. On my way past the family wall, the photo corner, I stopped. There was a new frame on the wall. Same pose. Same background. Doreen in the middle. Aurora on one side. Sophie on the other. I wasn't in it. I blinked. Stepped closer. The old photo, the one with me in it, was gone. Replaced. No words. No drama. Just gone. Like I'd never stood in that room. Never belonged in that frame. I remembered what Grandma said once when a cousin didn't invite her to a baby shower. When they erase your picture, they've already erased your place. I walked out quietly. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't wave. Just stepped into the night, slid into my car, and sat there. Engine off. Hands in my lap. No music. No air conditioning. I replayed everything. The laughter. The way people leaned toward Aurora. As the way Mom made space around me without touching me, I wondered, maybe this was the cost of not groveling. Maybe independence is a threat to people who need control. I'd filed the paperwork for this house. I helped wire the funds. I ran the numbers. But no one mentioned my name anymore. Not even in passing. This wasn't neglect. This was intentional. This wasn't forgetting. This was practice. They were rehearsing life without me. My phone vibrated on the console. A family group chat notification. It was a forwarded screenshot. Aurora's name at the top. "Please don't send info to Lori. She doesn't understand how we handle things." My fingers hovered over the screen. Frozen. They didn't just want me out of the house. They didn't want me in the story. I was just about to log out for lunch when the alert flashed on my work terminal. It wasn't urgent, just a notification about a property file update. Routine, except it had my name on it, or rather, didn't. I clicked through the lien registry. A secondary loan had been pulled against my mother's house. It was filed and approved 2 weeks ago. Aurora's name was there. So was Mom's. Mine wasn't. The lien used the house's equity that existed because of my contribution. $70,000 from my savings had jump-started that mortgage. But here it was, my financial footprint, scrubbed clean. I sat there, staring at the screen. My stomach tightened. I refreshed the page. Same thing. Same erasure. No signature from me. No heads up. No consultation. I checked the filing trail. Everything had passed. Loan officer, county recorder, internal verification. From a system standpoint, it was airtight. I printed the public copy, slid it under a legal sleeve, and stared at it until the toner smell made my eyes water. Everything okay? My coworker asked from across the cubicle. Just allergies, I replied. That evening, I drove straight to Mom's without calling. She was in the kitchen, the kettle already steaming. Aurora was in the next room, half watching a sitcom, her feet propped on the coffee table, like she hadn't just removed me from a legal document behind my back. Mom, I said, setting the printed lien on the kitchen island. What is this? She looked at the paper, then at me. Her eyes didn't even blink. It's just paperwork. The house is safe, isn't it? You took a loan against the house, without me. You work too much, she said, calm, like she was offering me soup. We didn't want to burden you with all the back and forth. Besides, Aurora's been managing most of the house things lately. Aurora appeared then, suddenly invested. It's just a loan, Lori. Chill. Nothing's changing. I looked between them, my voice low. You don't get to erase someone by pretending they're too busy to matter. Neither of them spoke. That silence, right there, that was the real signature. They had already signed me away long before the documents were filed. A few days later, I picked up the local newsletter at the corner store, something I rarely did. The front page caught my eye, a smiling photo of Aurora. Headline, Local Daughter Funds Full Renovation for Aging Parent. I froze. The article described her as a selfless young woman who spent her savings repairing her mother's roof and plumbing, sacrificing time and resources. I could barely breathe. The roof. I wrote that check. The plumbing? I scheduled every appointment, waited for contractors who showed up late, drove out for parts on my lunch breaks while Aurora was in Scottsdale for her birthday weekend. There was a pull quote from Mom. She's the glue of this home. I left the store without paying. At the house, I tossed the newsletter onto the counter. What is this? Mom looked at it. Isn't it nice? The community recognizes your sister's effort. That wasn't her effort. It was mine. You used my receipts, my name. Well, she said, brushing a crumb off the counter. Sweetheart, your sister needs a little recognition. You already have your career. Let her have something. She turned away, humming as she filled the kettle again. I walked out without another word. On the drive home, a memory surfaced. Me, 9 years old, handing Mom a hand-painted ornament at the church's Christmas potluck. Aurora had sung a hymn. Everyone clapped. Mom gushed over her voice. No one mentioned my ornament. No one hung it up. Back then, I told myself it was just an accident. A slip. A moment. Now I know better. It wasn't about oversight. It was about preference. My grandmother's words came back to me, clear as ever. Not all wounds bleed. Some bruise the spirit. At home, I pulled out every file I had. Bank transfers, email receipts. The roofing contractor's signed work order with my phone number at the bottom. I made copies, scanned what I could, labeled every folder. Then I pulled out a fresh notebook, wrote one word at the top. Receipts. I came back from the grocery store to find Mom's office door closed. Locked. That never happened. Not once in all the years she used that room for paperwork and bills. I stood there, keys still in hand, listening. Voices inside. One of them was Aurora. The other, a man's voice I didn't recognize. And then, clear as a siren through the wood. We'll finalize the signatures once I get her out of the way. I didn't knock, didn't barge in, just walked into the kitchen like I hadn't heard a damn thing, placed the grocery bags on the counter. I knew better than to confront someone mid-lie. Better to let the lie finish itself. Later that night, I poured a glass of water and sat down with my laptop, searched the county records, then the real estate listings. I don't know what I expected to find. Maybe nothing. Maybe something worse. I found it. A quiet sale listing. My childhood home, Aurora's contact info right below it. No co-owners, no mention of me. They weren't just rewriting family roles. They were rewriting legal history. The next morning, my phone was lit up like a pinball machine. Notifications, tags, screenshots. My neighbor Mary texted me. Beautiful post your sister made. You okay? I opened Facebook. There it was. Aurora's face at the top of a long, sappy tribute. How my mom and I built this house from scratch. Photos of renovations. Aurora painting a wall. Aurora handing Mom a hammer. Aurora handing Sophie a tiny toy drill. All smiles, all staged. Every nail, every tile, every dollar came from our hands and hearts. I stared. I built that bathroom. The tile under Mom's kitchen sink, that was mine, both the idea and the money. I spent 2 weekends in a row waiting on a plumber who ghosted us twice. The comments were worse. You two are such an inspiration. Real family, doing real work. Your sister is so lucky to have you. I read every word, every heart emoji, every fake compliment. Not one mention of me, not even a vague we, just them. Later that day, I drove by the house. A big white open house sign waved from the yard like a victory flag. I parked down the street and walked in through the front like a stranger. Aurora was inside, touring a young couple around like she owned the place, which, apparently, she now did. This kitchen was my passion project, she told them. Tore it down myself. My mom and I, we really believe in building legacy. There was a framed article on the kitchen counter. Aurora, local hero of real estate restoration. I looked around. Familiar walls, familiar space. None of it mine anymore. Who owns the property? I asked the agent, who didn't recognize me. He smiled like he'd memorized the line. It's fully under the mother and daughter on file. Just the two of them. I didn't say a word, just nodded. Walked out, got in my car, closed the door, and screamed. Not out loud, not in a movie kind of way. But in my head, every inch of me screamed. At home, I paced, emails drafted, deleted, posts half-typed, unsent. I opened the voicemail for a local reporter, closed it before it rang. They wanted me to lose it, to show up unhinged, to become the angry one, the unstable one, the bitter daughter clinging to scraps no one admitted I laid down first. I wasn't giving them that. Instead, I printed the screenshots, the records, the listing, the Facebook post, the tax filings, filed them neatly. Folder label, original script. Next morning, I got dressed, pressed slacks, buttoned blouse. Not for them, for me. I returned to the open house just as a new couple pulled up. They smiled politely. I nodded back. Walked right past Aurora. Didn't look at her. Didn't acknowledge the smug tilt of her chin or the way Mom averted her gaze from across the living room. Instead, I handed the couple a sealed envelope. You might want to read this before signing anything, I said, voice steady, and left. They could rewrite whatever fiction they wanted. I came prepared to publish truth. The photo was posted by a cousin I hadn't heard from in over a year. There she was, grinning in front of a buffet table, paper plate in hand, surrounded by family. The caption said, "So grateful to celebrate Mom's recovery tonight with the ones who matter most." It took a minute for my brain to register the words. Tonight. Not last week, not upcoming. Tonight. I looked at the time. 6:15. I was still in my work clothes, feet sore from standing all day, phone silent in my pocket. I wasn't invited. I debated not going. But I didn't want to feed the story that I was cold or distant or, as Aurora had said once, too focused on herself to show up for others. So I went. When I walked in, I could feel the shift. Heads turned, eyebrows lifted. Doreen turned from the stove with a smile that was 2 seconds late. "You weren't expected, dear," she said, voice sugary and flat. There was no place set for me at the long table, just a foldable chair half tucked by the patio door. I sat in it. The draft from the slider behind me was sharp, and it wasn't just the breeze. I could feel it in the way people looked past me, not through me, like I was part of the decor. Something they couldn't throw out, but didn't know where to store. Aurora stood to give a toast just before dessert. "We've been through so much, Mom," she said, raising her glass. "Just the two of us. And little Sophie, of course." The room clapped. Doreen wiped a tear from her eye. Someone snapped a photo. I started to stand, thought about saying something. Not a speech, just something. But I caught Aurora's eyes locking with mine across the room. There was no anger there, just quiet control. She was daring me to break the moment. I didn't. I sat back down, picked at the salad I hadn't been served, but had passed around like it didn't matter. Even the cake, the one I'd picked up that afternoon out of habit, was passed around like a gift from nowhere. Nobody asked who brought it. Nobody thanked me. After dessert, I got up to leave. But Mom called me over near the kitchen. She had something in her hand, a small velvet box. I knew what it was before she opened it. Inside was the LAM ring I'd saved for months after Dad died to have it made. L for Lori, A for Aurora, M for Mom. 3 women, 1 band. I think this suits someone else now, she said. Aurora's more hands-on, and this always felt, you're kind of sentimental. She pressed the box into my palm. My fingers curled around it, but I didn't look down. My chest felt like it was caught in a vice, but I didn't let it show. I just nodded. Not in agreement, just acknowledgement. This is the last time, I told myself. I'll let them give me something that feels like a slap. I walked to my car with the box still in my hand. I didn't cry on the drive home. I didn't scream or call a friend to vent. I just drove in silence, letting the sound of tires over asphalt drown out everything else. Somewhere near the old church on 8th, I pulled into the empty parking lot, the kind of place that held space without questions. I sat with my hands gripping the steering wheel, the ring box resting on the passenger seat like a loaded gun. Images poured in. Holding Mom's hand when she had fevers, fixing the bathroom leak with my own tools, wiring money when taxes came due, and Aurora was conveniently unreachable. All those things I did because I thought love was shown by stepping up, not by taking credit. In the stillness, my voice cracked. What else do I need to give back so they can feel whole without me? I stayed there until the sky turned black, then drove home. As I checked my mailbox on the way in, I saw it. A pale pink envelope, hand-lettered in Aurora's handwriting. Inside was a brunch invitation. Homeowners Women's Brunch, celebrating strong female ownership. The address was Mom's house. The bottom line read, for the official owners and managers of the property. I looked down at the ring box still in my hand. They didn't just return my ring, they mailed me my severance. The letter came in a plain white envelope with the county's seal embossed on the corner. It looked harmless, civil, but I knew better than to trust envelopes from the county, especially when I hadn't asked for anything. I opened it at my desk during my second cup of coffee. The paper was crisp, the language legal, the meaning loud. My name had been removed from the deed, not disputed, not questioned, just gone. Attached was a copy of the signed form, my signature at the bottom in blue ink, except I never signed it. But it was mine, my handwriting, or at least it looked like it. And then I realized it. Aurora had access to the old refinancing paperwork. They'd pulled my signature from an archived document, cut it, pasted it, filed it. My chest tightened. My fingers trembled just enough that I had to put the mug down. They didn't just take the house. They stole my identity. That afternoon, I didn't go straight home. I ended up parking 3 houses down from Mom's, engine off, staring at the porch. I wasn't ready to go in. Then Sophie came into view. She must have been outside drawing chalk on the driveway. She spotted me and skipped up, holding a page torn from her sketch pad. "Hi, Aunt Lori," I smiled, just barely. "Hey, kiddo, that for me?" She handed it over, 2 stick figures holding a red heart between them. "It's you and Mommy." "Oh yeah?" I said, tapping the shorter one. "Which one is me?" She pointed to the one with messy hair. I had to laugh. Then, with the same innocent rhythm she used to name colors, she added, "Mommy says you're not really part of our house anymore. Is that true?" I looked down at her. No malice, no intention. Just a child repeating what she'd been told. "I used to be," I said, gently. "Maybe in my own way, I still am." She smiled, hugged me, then ran back toward the garage like she hadn't just carved my heart in 2. Generational erasure isn't an accident, it's taught. I took the drawing, placed it on the dashboard, and walked up the driveway. I didn't knock. I walked through the front door like I had every right to, because I did. Mom was in the living room, sipping coffee, flipping through a magazine like nothing had changed. I held the letter in my hand and stood there until she looked up. Why? I asked. She set the cup down. You weren't acting like family anymore. We made a decision. We? I echoed. Aurora walked in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Mom thought you'd be okay with it. You always say you're independent. I wasn't okay with forgery, I said, holding up the letter. It's not forgery if we all know you would have said yes, Mom replied, like she was explaining a recipe. You used my signature from old paperwork. That's illegal. We did what we had to, she said, shrugging. For the house. For the family. Aurora chimed in, arms crossed. You always make things harder than they need to be, Lori. I stood there looking at both of them. This wasn't miscommunication. It was calculation. I didn't cry, didn't yell. I turned and left. I don't remember getting in the car. I don't remember driving. All I know is I ended up parked behind a gas station with the engine still running. I sat there for minutes, hours. I don't know. And then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because if I didn't laugh, I would have exploded. This isn't a family anymore, I whispered to myself. It's a company, and I'm the liability. That moment changed everything. I opened my phone, found the number for a legal referral office I'd bookmarked weeks ago but never touched. I hit call. Later that night, I got home and went straight to the hallway closet, pulled out the family photo album Mom had given me back in college, the one we used to flip through every Christmas. I took it to the dining table. Page by page, I removed every photo I was in. Some came out easy, others I had to work for. I placed them in a separate box, labeled it Evidence of Existence. If they wanted me erased, I'd show them what it cost to remove me. The invitation came in a heavy envelope, cream-colored, embossed, formal. A family heritage dinner hosted by the local cultural center. Doreen and Aurora were being honored as caretakers of generational legacy. The kind of phrasing that makes your skin itch if you know the truth behind the curtain. I stood in my kitchen holding it, debating. I could have ignored it, let them have their show without interference. But that's what they wanted. My absence would prove their point, that I didn't belong, never really did. So I went. I wore a navy blue pantsuit, not flashy, just sharp enough to cut through a room if I needed to. Folder tucked under my arm, hair back, no perfume. At the reception table, the volunteer checked my name and gave me a strained smile. You're at table 9, she said. It was near the kitchen entrance, right next to the swinging doors and trash bins, the only table without a centerpiece. Even here, I wasn't invisible. I was disposable. I sat down, unfolded the napkin, waited. A few minutes later, Franklin showed up. He looked older than I remembered, slower in his movements. Same quiet eyes, though. He scanned the room, then made a decision. Walked right past the head table, past Doreen and Aurora, and sat next to me. Didn't think you'd come, he said. I almost didn't. He leaned in, voice low. I shouldn't have let her talk me out of putting your name on the house years ago. I didn't move. He added, she hated how much of you reminded her of me. And just like that, I understood. Doreen's anger, her coldness, the calculated way she chipped at me over the years. It wasn't just about power. It was personal. Generational. She hadn't just erased me to protect Aurora's place. She erased me to punish the parts of Dad still living in me. There were speeches, toasts, applause, but I don't remember a word of it. I waited. Then, quietly, I asked the event photographer to take a picture of me and Dad in front of the family legacy banner. He looked surprised, but nodded, snapped a few shots. Aurora approached afterward, her smile sweetened with vinegar. You're trying to make a scene now? No, I said. I'm making a record. I handed the photographer a flash drive. Please send me the raw shots. I keep originals, always. That night, at home, I laid everything out. Legal filings, photos, copies of receipts, a trail of emails. I wasn't preparing for war. I was building legacy. I uploaded everything to a cloud folder. Gave it a name that made my chest tighten. Heritage, not erased. They think silence means surrender. I think silence means strategy. Before bed, I sat down at my laptop, drafted an email. Subject: let's talk before this goes public. I didn't hit send. I stared at the blinking cursor, then saved it as a draft. They should fear the moment I stop talking. Because that's when I've already decided. Saturday afternoon, the kind of Tucson heat that makes your clothes feel heavier than they are. I pulled into the driveway 10 minutes early for the so-called family property discussion. I had the documents, I had the folder, I had a clean copy of everything they'd signed without me. What I didn't have was access. The front door was locked. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again. Still nothing. Sent a text to Aurora. She replied within seconds. It's just us and the legal rep today. That's when I knew. Not suspected. Knew. Behind me, a neighbor across the street stood watering his lawn. He saw me, looked down at my folder, then up at the house. I thought this was your house too, he called out, half sincere, half curious. I didn't answer. I walked around the side of the house and tried the laundry door. It opened. I stepped into the hallway and was met by the sound of shuffling paper and whispered urgency. Then, silence. Mom appeared in the doorway. Coffee in one hand, sternness in the other. You weren't invited today. You're trespassing. I held my ground. I have a right to be here. This is still my legal residence. Aurora showed up next, already in defense mode. You need to leave. You're being unstable. That word, unstable. It's what people say when they want to provoke you into proving them right. I didn't move. Mom walked toward me, slow and deliberate, like I was an intruder, and without warning, she grabbed my shoulder and yanked. I slipped, hit the tile. She didn't stop, dragged me, arm twisting, papers falling, my elbow catching on the grout line as I screamed. A vase shattered somewhere behind me. Then came the sirens. A neighbor had called. Someone finally did the right thing. 2 EMTs rushed in. One of them, Jake, I think his name was, recognized me. He'd seen me speak at a workplace seminar about elder abuse and legal fraud. He looked down at me, my blouse torn at the shoulder, bruises already blooming across my upper arm. What happened? He asked, crouching beside me. I looked past him, directly at Aurora and Doreen, standing silent and stiff. They've been erasing me for months, I said, voice shaking but clear. Aurora's eyes flared. She deserved this, she snapped. She's been provoking Mom for years. You don't know what she's like. Jake didn't flinch. Ma'am, he said, turning to her, voice firm. Please sit down. You don't get to decide what someone deserves. Mom still hadn't spoken, not a word. She looked at me like I wasn't bleeding, like I wasn't even there. I reached into my purse with my good hand and pulled out a small flash drive. Here, I said to Jake. Everything's on it. Recorded calls, texts, bank transfers, property changes, all of it. He took it without a word. Then I looked over at Mr. Ellis, the same neighbor who had asked if the house was mine. He stood just inside the door, holding his keys, looking unsure. I handed him a manila folder. If anything happens to me again, I told him, make sure this goes to the county clerk's office. He nodded. Mom made a sudden move forward, as if to snatch it from him, but he stepped back. I think she's had enough taken, he said. That moment didn't feel like triumph. It didn't feel like justice. It just felt real, painfully real. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, I realized my hand was still clenched around something. The ring box. I'd brought it. Why? I don't know. Maybe I thought it was a kind of closure. Maybe I thought I'd throw it back at her. Maybe I just needed to remember. I opened it. The initials were still there. L.A.M. I stared at them. You erased the meaning, I whispered, but not the memory. And memories have a way of getting louder when silence finally breaks. A week after the ambulance, I was back in my apartment. The shoulder brace itched. The bruises on my ribs were fading, but I still moved like I'd been hit by a car. No calls, no apologies, not even a text from Aurora. I wasn't surprised. What did surprise me was the letter. It came from the EMT, Jake, the one who'd looked me in the eyes that day when no one else would. Inside was a folded piece of lined notebook paper. "Thank you," it read. "Most people freeze. Most people walk out. You didn't. That wasn't weakness. That was the strongest thing I've seen all year." I stared at the words for a long time. Another letter came that same day, this one from a legal nonprofit. They'd heard about what happened through someone at the county. Offered help, free of charge. They'd seen worse, they said, but not often. I sat down at my computer, opened the property records. My name was still missing from the deed. But this time, I didn't flinch. I didn't need my name back on the deed. I needed it back in my own heart. That afternoon, another envelope arrived, this time from the Department of Economic Security. A benefits summary. Caregiver stipend approval. Backdated 3 months. Under my name. I hadn't applied. Inside was a breakdown of funds received, all routed to an account tied to my mother. Her handwriting, her signature, her justification. And still, my name. I emailed her. No greeting, no fluff. Just the facts, the form, and the fraud. Her reply came 4 hours later. "It wasn't money for me. It was for this family. Don't you understand that by now?" I didn't reply. I forwarded the files to the department. Not to punish. To close the file. Love without consent isn't love. It's control. Later that evening, I sat at my desk, pulling together the final pieces. I mailed Doreen a padded envelope. Inside, a flash drive. Every file she pretended didn't exist. And a note. "This is every record you ignored. You can keep your version of the story. I'll keep the truth." Then I addressed a second envelope. To Sophie. "To be opened when you're 18. Inside, I placed a photo. One of the last ones ever taken of all 3 of us. Doreen, Aurora, and me. No edits, no cuts. Just us, before everything fractured. I tucked the LAM ring beneath the photo. I won't poison her with bitterness. But I won't disappear either." The next morning, a final email from Doreen landed in my inbox. "I never meant to hurt you, but you always made things harder." I didn't write back. I printed it, hole-punched it, and placed it into a folder labeled Proof of Pattern. They called me bitter for remembering, but forgetting would have meant dying quietly. That weekend, I visited Reed Park. There's a little garden off the side trail where community donors are listed on a plaque. Women of Strength, it says at the top. I made a donation under my grandmother's name, not mine. Nobody needs to know I was behind it. I walked the path slowly, sun on my neck, wind in my ears, and for the first time in a long while, I felt light. "You can keep the house. I've already built something they can't take."